Welcome to another Computing with Dr. D Windows Forms video. In this one, I go through an algorithm and talk about tax rates which would apply in Australia using a switch case statement. In the switch case statement, you can have various input from your yearly earnings, which can calculate the amount of tax that would be payable to the tax department. At the end of the video, I cut it fairly short and I do not explain the full calculations, but you can get those from the tax table shown at the start and the algorithm shown. I hope you enjoy the video and we'll see you next time.
So it's a pay calculator that calculates an estimated yearly income and tax from two data entry points: hours worked per week and pay per hour. You need to work out the yearly tax and you have to work out your pay per week, etc. So this is a switch case statement, and what I've done here, I wanted to show you some of this logic so that when a switch case statement starts, and I'm going to put some comments in here while we're talking. So when the number is less than or equal to 18,200, the tax is 0. So you can see that that comes from this table. The tax is nil between 0 and $18,200. So that's the first logical statement. So we can say if pay is less than 1,800, then so that's what that means. It's like an if statement, but it's a case. It's a case of where an integer n is less than 18,200, then you're going to put it into here. Now, the thing about this is that you might have some issues here with the integer data type when we're talking about decimal, so you might have to play around with that when you're writing the code, but not here because we're not worried about whether it runs. We're only talking about logic. So the next bit of logic down here, the next one, says, and remember my two forward slashes just signify a comment. So this says if pay is between 18,200 and 37,000, then calculate tax after subtracting 18,200. Now you might say, why did we do that? Well, the first 18,200 is tax-free. So that means that the next section is the only bit of your earnings that attracts any tax at all. So you go, if pay is between 18 and 30, then calculate tax after subtracting 18,200. Then multiply by 0.19, which is the exact amount that is 19%. So here you go, okay, so it's 19 cents or 19% for every 100 cents or every dollar over 18,200. Okay, so that makes sense. So that's a fairly straightforward logical bit. The next bit's a bit more complicated. So this one is if it's greater than 37,000, we get complicated. If it's over, tax equals $35.72, because it says that up here. It says, oh yeah, it over. What that means is that the tax on 37,000 exactly is 3,572. Now you can work that out by going, okay, 37,000 minus 18,201 gives you a particular value. And then what you do is you multiply that number by 0.19. And if you do that on a calculator, you'll find that the answer will be, and should be, 3,572. Okay, so you need to do that, and then you've got 32.5 cents for each dollar. So again, you have to go down here and go, righto. So it taxes that plus it is a minus 37,000 multiplied by times an X here, 0.325. So that's what that means here. That's what I'm trying to work out here. Tax equals pay per year minus 37,000 times that plus that old tax amount that we found up here. Now, I hope that makes some sort of sense, because what your challenge is now to do a similar statement for the next two cases. So this one will be tax between, and I mean, if you have this document and you go back through this video, you might like to type in some of these comments so it makes sense to you, because I know this is a challenge, let's face it. So we're talking now about, okay, over 37,000 to 90,000. And then we're talking about between 90,000 and 180,000. And then we're talking over 180,000. So there's three more of these things, is there? Or two more? Let's have a look. Yep. Pay between 90 and 180,000, and the next one is over 180,000. So when you've got an exam in software development, they often give you these algorithm tasks, and that's why I thought I'd start with this today, a bit of logic. Maybe I'll change that to something more reddish. I do like the web colors are kind of better than the other colors. Play around with the appearance of your buttons and things, though. There's all sorts of things you can do to it. You can make it kind of 3D. You can have borders and so on. There's background image. You can even put an image on your button. All right, so I'm going to go into the code. Now, remember, to start the code, you have to start up, well, we've got the code running here, but that's because I've clicked the label. Remember, I'm going to leave that because it was a mistake, but I have to correct it somewhere else if I need to remove it. I don't need to remove it. It just doesn't do anything. So I'm going to double click on this button. And what that does, it starts up some button click code. I'll do some comments. call it a procedure. Now the variables, we said, okay, we need hours per week. So we need, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use decimal variables here. Okay, so I should be able to declare these variables and I should then be able to use them. So let's say I'm doing that as we work it out. I'm going to go decimal, hours per week, and then I need to know that I have to get that from a text box. The question is, which text box? There's two text boxes. There's earnings per hour and there's hours per week. So text box 2 is the hours per week. Okay, so I've got to convert it to the decimal, remember, because I have to change it from the text in the text box into a number that we can then use in our program. I said it was text box 2 dot text, and then I need something very similar to this. So this is the hours per week, and because I need something similar to both of those, I can just copy it, and then I can just paste it in. Obviously, it's not hours per week now, though. It is pay per hour. Pay per hour. And that's from text box 1. Now you'll notice down the bottom I've got no errors, so we know that that's all good. So this is pay per hour. Now these are just comments, remember, where I've got the forward slashes. And I'm now going to say, okay, we also need to think about our pay for the year. And we can work it out as we declare the variable. We don't have to muck around. So we'll say calculate pay per year, because we need all of this before we start doing the complicated tax. So I'll call it, again, I'm declaring it a decimal, and I'm saying it's pay per year, which I'll abbreviate to YR, and that equals hours per week times pay per hour. Pretty simple, but what do I multiply it by to get it to pay per year? Who can tell me?
52.
52. Because there's 52 weeks in the year. Cool. Now, one thing about this, remember we had to round things off because the reason we're doing decimal, we want things to be to 2 decimal places. This is definitely a money calculation, so really the ideal variable type to use is decimal, and we need to round it off. In fact, we need to round it down to 2 places. So to do that, what we do is we go, okay, pay per year equals math round. I'm rounding down the same thing to 2 decimal places. Okey-doke. Now, we have an output for our pay per year, don't we? So if we better save all of this code, just have a bit of a look. Pay per year goes down here, doesn't it? So we should be able to make some text go in there that gives us an output for our pay for the year. One thing I don't like about these boxes is the font size thereafter. They're still in 8. This will change the text box. And I'll actually make them both 12 just so that I'm consistent across the board. I'll save it all again. So I'm going to put it in there, which is label 10. So this is the output label 10. So I can already put that there because I know that label 10 is where the pay per year goes. It's text with a capital T. And then so I can do that. Now output pay per year, which I'm doing here. So label 10.text is I'm converting it back to a string. I need to convert it to a string because I'm putting it into a text box. And we know it's called pay per year. And I need my semicolon at the end of every line. At this point, if I save it, I should be able to see if I'm on the right track. So I can test it quickly. You won't see it if I test it. But anyway, you can, if you test it at this point, you will find that you'll get an amount in that text box. One thing about it is that because you've got pay per year, it won't have the dollar sign in front of it. You can do that using a little bit of a string here called the dollar sign, and you could put that in here, and then you should be able to have a concatenator, which I think is a plus sign, isn't it? If I have someone earning $35 an hour, $35.19, and the hours per week is 34 hours, it says that would be equivalent to $62,215.92. So you can see here that in fact everything looks good. We have rounded it off to 2 cents. The dollar sign worked that I put there. The button works, the calculation works. What do you need to earn? If you work 38 hours a week, what do you need to earn per hour, I wonder, to get to, say, 100,000? Well, you're still only getting 82,000, except that's your yearly pay, your gross pay, I should say there. So I might go back and change that to gross pay because this is not after tax, whereas the weekly pay here, I probably want to be after tax. You can do it either way. In any case, I'll change my screen and go back to the. What we need to switch and work out is the pay per year. So we're switching pay per year. What that means that every time we use the word case, we're actually talking about pay per year. Switch case for tax calc. So I've got the first case. Now the first case, remember, from our table of tax was less than 18,200. So I go, I actually will call everything decimal. And I'm calling everything decimal inside here. This wasn't in the algorithm, and it's not even necessary in an algorithm, unless you're being particularly specific. But you need to now be quite specific about what you're doing. So we're going when it less than or equal to 18,200. And when does less than equal to that, we now know we have no tax paid. So tax itself is 0. Now at this point, I should get an error. Now why do I get errors here? We can go down here and have a look. Control cannot fall out of switch. Ah, very good. So I have to break it after we do the calculation. The name tax does not exist because I haven't declared the tax variable. So up here now, I have to go, okay, well, let's say equals 0. I'll just assign it a value of 0. Now that's got rid of one of the errors. The other thing I need to do, if we have finished with this case, we actually tell it to break. That means it breaks out of the switch case statement. Now the break should really be under the case, so we'll take that over here so it lines up nicely. And then we've got our second case. Pay per year is under 37,000, but it is above 18,200. So when N, which is your pay, and I can do a bracket there just so we do our calculations always in a bracket. So this is the logic of it. When it is less than or equal to 37,000 and, which is 2 of these funny ampersands, and N is greater than 18,200, then, which is all I have to do is a colon for that, is I work out the tax. And the tax then, remember, tax at that point, our algorithm told us, was 19% of anything that's over 18,200. So that was this logic here. Pay per year minus 18,200 times 0.19. Now, when you use just a number like this, you have to tell it what sort of variable to be. And there are certain codes that we use. And believe it or not, for a decimal, the code that we use is an M. And that will just automatically change that value into a decimal number rather than a floating point or some other sort that it might assume it is. You're actually telling it what sort of variable to be. So now we've worked out that tax. And then you've got your all other cases will be like this. Now I've given you the logic of some of them in an algorithm, but what we need to do after the switch case, there is also probably a default we can use, but we need to kind of round the tax. We need to say we've got some tax, so we're going to go tax equals, I'm getting over time, aren't I? Maths round tax 2. And I probably want to output that into something. And this is the tax per year. So I'm saving it. I just go back and have a look at it, and that was the tax per year, which will be in label 11. So that means I say label 11.text equals convert to string our tax. Now, I haven't put a $sign here, but you should be able to work out that from up here because we did it up there. You can put your $signs in if you want by using that bit of code. But what I'm going to do now is I have no errors. I need to see if my tax works. Let's try 25. I don't know if you see what's happening here. So now I can say, okay, yearly gross pay, 32,500, and the tax per year is 2,717. So that works, yes? So it works for that value. You need all the other values in order for it to work it out for all the values in the algorithm. So you can have a look at that. So there are various other bits of code that go here from their algorithm. So